You're recording? Okay. Let's start back. So, this is my senior project presentation. So what we're doing will be, I'm going to introduce the who and the what and the where of what my project was about. And then we're going to go through the fact-finding process, my hypothesis, validating that, and then how I monitored the progress of the student. So Brian is a third grade student. He just turned 9. He loves outdoors and sports. He's funny and he's very social. He loves to play baseball and basketball, and his favorite food is chicken, and he likes to play outside with his friends. When he's at home, he likes to watch Star Wars and anything about sharks. And he wants to go to Disneyland and someday the Nerf store. At school, he has a problem staying on task. During independent work, this a lot has to do with his social nature. He usually finishes work last in class, and he is behind grade standard in both math and reading. Last year, he struggled with both language arts and mathematics. He lives with his mom and his dad. He has an older sister. His third grade teacher does most of the math instruction with the student teacher, which is me, giving support. Brian also has a book club teacher who helps him with his reading. He received Title I services for English language arts. My practicum setting where I'm at is Sunnyside Elementary. All names, by the way, have been changed for anonymity. There are 27 students in Brian's class. There's 13 girls and 14 boys. And only one student has tested at grade level for math during the iReady assessment, which they did at the beginning of the year. The rest of our students are pretty much below standard, at least 1 or 2 grade levels. If you see here on their iReady chart for this school, pretty much all students in math in all grades do not meet the standards. And in third grade, only I think 33% actually meet standard, which is 18 students meet, 18 third graders. And so I work in small groups twice a week, between 1:10 and 2:15, so about 30 minutes for math. So the first step I gave is I gave the entire class an SLA, a survey level. I got that from the Ames Web third grade probe. And so this is the standard student that I chose. And you can see the standard students still have problems with multiplication, but they haven't been taught multiplication, and they should know multiplication fluently until the end of third grade. Here we see Brian's survey, and here we see he's missed several strategic errors in adding and subtracting. And I gave this SLA to see where, who needed help and where the help was needed. I used the Common Core standard of numbers base 10 for the third grade, which is fluently add and subtract within 1,000 using the strategies and algorithms based on place value, which they have been working on. I also gathered other data from students, teachers, and observing, which I put in my Riot matrix, which is, oh my gosh, in tab 2, if I can find tab 2. Oh, here it is. Sorry. So here is the Riot ISO matrix. The math curriculum they use is called Jump Math. It's standard, it's district required. Most of this teachers that I have talked to, including my CE, really don't like the curriculum. They don't think it focuses on just a couple strategies. It gives them too many strategies, and then they don't really get one or two down well. So she tries to put her own work in and just use part of the core and the workbook. The workbook is pretty boring from what I've seen. It's just basic worksheets and problems. No, really, not a lot of application problems. Math has not been a focus in the school-wide until this year, where they are doing a strong focus on math. My CT doesn't feel comfortable teaching math because her specialty is language arts. So math kind of can be pushed to the side more often. As for Brian loves math. He loves to learn. He thinks he's really good at it. His testing score tested him at the beginning of second grade. So there's a little bit of discrepancy on how he feels, how well he does, and how well he actually does. But he tries to use the strategies that he is aware. He counts on his fingers and uses jump math charts and other anchor charts that have been established. Math is usually taught at the end of the day, right before recess. So sometimes it can be a little hard for him to finish because he just wants to get done. So my step 2 was my hypothesis, and I believe that looking at his SLA, that I found he...
Can't see that.
Okay. That he struggles with carrying over and borrowing, which is a strategy that he should have been taught. But here we see that he doesn't carry over his tens. Here he doesn't really know what to do with the hundreds place value in most of his things. When I did his status sheet, I found that the first significant skill that he didn't pass on was adding numbers without carrying. However, there was only one problem, and I believe he just needs more practice on fluency facts. So I went down to the second one, which was the adding 2 double digits with carrying, which is shown the strategy he does not understand. So the next step I gave was a SPA on adding 2 double digits. I gave him 25 problems of double digit addition with carrying. And what I found here. And then, so as you can see, he only got 1 right. And the only reason why he got that run right is because the strategy he was using actually worked for that problem. Here you can see that he adds the first one's columns and he gets 10, which he writes down 10. And then the 10th column he writes down 9. So he's getting 910. And he obviously doesn't go back and check to see if it makes sense. So we need to work on that strategy. Then during the time that I gave this SPA and came back and saw Ben again, this teacher had taught the lesson on how to carry over. how to regroup and carry over. So I had to check again to see if Brian had still a discrepancy.
Tilt the screen on your laptop up a little bit.
Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
So my first spot was given, and he only passed with 4%. So I gave him the second spot, which was only 6 problems, so it was a little not so tedious. And it still showed that he had a discrepancy on where he tried to carry over, but he didn't. He carried over once, but he didn't carry it over to the tens. So here he's 8, 9, and 1 should have been 182, should have been 18, and he just put the 8. So he doesn't really understand what to do with the extra. So I still showed that I needed to, he only had a 50% passing rate. So I had to show that he still needed some extra help. And so right now, he added, out of 25 problems, he only got 1 right, and the standard which should be 100%. And in the second one, he only got 3 out of the 6 problems, and he should have had them all. So so I decided to, in a small group, since there was a few other students that needed the same help, we decided to focus our lessons on regrouping strategies, starting with the ones place. I was going to do twice a week, 30 minutes a day during my normal math time with them. My teaching target is to be by December 20th, when given a worksheet with 10 addition problems of 3-digit numbers with carrying, Brian will use the strategy learned to solve all the problems. So by the end of this, I want him to be able to add 3 digits plus 3 digits with carrying over. If he needed an IEP, which he does not, but if he needed to have one, the objectives I had chosen were I want him to be able to know multiplication and learn how to do multiplication, which is standard for him by the end of 3rd grade. He seems to, with his SLA, show that he has a basic understanding actually of multiplication. He just needs to learn on fluency facts. And so so I would like that to be done by October 15th of next year. So my planning instruction, I wanted 3 lessons, hopefully at least, of teaching and practicing the regrouping strategy. My first plan was to teach the strategy with manipulatives. The second lesson was going to involve a game to practice, and then the third was just a review of what we had learned. So my calendar was 2 days. The first 2 lessons was the first lesson I actually teach the strategy and then see how they did, and used an anchor chart. And then the second lesson, we were going to play a game, and the third was all review. Hopefully by then we can move on to the next level, which would be the triple digit addition. So I had him, the first format was I just used the Stein format to teach regrouping, but I used the base 10 blocks to do so, which they don't use in class usually, so he was really excited to use them. He was able to, here you will see that I also used whiteboards.
Volume. Oh. Getting pretty loud.
Okay. I also used their personal whiteboards because they use them all the time to do, and it's easy for them to erase mistakes, see mistakes, and everything. So here is one problem that Brian did, where we took the base 10 blocks and he created the two numbers to be added. I then had him count the ones and take 10 of those and trade them in to me for another, and so he could count them and see where he got 71. We did several of these problems. He was very quick to catch on to it. By the end of the day, I gave him his mastery measure of 6 problems. I chose 6 problems because my CT says that if they can do 6 problems of the same type correctly at least 3 times, they have that skill down. And so here you can see how he did miss one problem. However, he used the strategy correctly. He just misadded his facts. So even though he used the strategy, it's still not 100%, which still is not a passing master. So the second day we did a bingo game where they had to add the problems, and they could use the base 10 blocks if they wanted to, but they had to add the problem and then find the total on their bingo board. Brian was usually the one that was done first. He's very competitive, so when it came to being the first, trying to get the problem done, he usually was, and I believe it took him a couple of times for a couple of the numbers. He's like, I couldn't find this number's on the board. I'm like, well, then maybe you should check your problem, and where he found his mistakes. So the third lesson, we just reviewed the anchor chart that we created together. On the steps of the tasks. I created a chart to where he could keep track of how well he was doing on each mastery measure. Right here, you'll see where the first mastery measure, if he scored a 1, if he got them all right, if he thought he maybe missed 1 or 2, or if he just was not understanding. He scored 1s. He thought he did 100% right every single time. And then he kept track of how many actually got right. So he could see that he had a lot of confidence, but he actually missed some for the first 3. If you go back to the data chart, this is the line where we wanted him to be, having 100% correct every single time. And he went up and down and up and down. At points, at the third part, after the third mastery measure, he was kind of frustrated and was upset why he was keep missing. He was just really frustrated that he kept missing. So we reviewed the chart, and we reviewed all of his mastery measures, and he went and saw exactly what the mistake he was doing, and that it wasn't the strategy, which you can see in this chart, that he used every single step, every single time he was supposed to, but he was still getting them wrong. So we went over, he checked to see what he was doing wrong. He noticed that it was the fact that he was misadding. When I asked him what might we be able to do to correct this, he said, I can slow down. I said, yes, that's great. I said, what is another strategy to maybe check, or to maybe make sure that you have right? And he says, after I was done, he could go back and check his answers. I said, those are great strategies, and encouraged him to use them. So my next steps, a sequencing I would like to do, is working on subtraction with borrowing. It's the same kind of strategy, so it's similar, but it's backwards. So I want him to be able to generalize the regrouping process over all mathematical functions, not just addition and subtraction, but when they get into multiplication and division, I want him to see that the same regrouping process is needed throughout the whole unit. I would follow the same instructional as I did addition, with using an anchor chart, using the base 10 blocks, using a game, and then a review. I would also like to include borrowing and borrowing and carrying over addition subtraction on his iReady program. Add just a few extra lessons or extra practice programs, so he just has that practice over and over so he can master the skill. My recommendations would not just be tackling the addition and subtraction there, but I want to tackle addition and subtraction in time. It is also another Common Core standard for 3rd grade that they need to be able to take word problems and be able to subtract and add time increments. They've already been working on reading time on an analog clock to the nearest minute, and so incorporating the word problems to with this would practice not only his addition and subtraction strategies, but show them in another application in life. I would, before starting the lessons, I would probably give him another SLA that focused on time units, reading time, word problems in general, and addition and subtraction of time, since it is a different base than the base 10. And just to see what knowledge he does have already. My references I have used were, in this whole program, I used Beck and Macau's Bringing Words to Life. I used the Common Core State Standards, Stein book, and the Kelly CBE book. For a complete list, you can look at my project. And thank you very much.